What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the STR Investing Podcast. I am your host, Mark Lumpkin, and we are bringing you another Monday market data report backed by popular demand. I got a lot of shout outs from some of you guys, a lot of DMs, a lot of text messages and emails saying that you guys like this new format. If you don't like it, shoot me a message as well, guys, because all I got was positive feedback. So I'm going to keep running with this. Every Monday, we're going to talk about a specific market. We're going to talk about the amenity stack and what the competition has in that market, so you know if you go into this market, what you will need to succeed and what your competition might have. This week, we are bringing you none other than Charleston, South Carolina. It's a heavyweight champion down in the Southeast as far as STR markets go. I've probably spent a couple of weeks, if not a month, in Charleston myself with my family, so I've been able to see firsthand what all the fuss is about. You got a little over 8 million annual visitors. That was a record high last calendar year. And so it's a growing short-term rental and tourism market. Total tourism impact is a little over $14 billion. A lot of money being spent there. And tourism counts for about 23.5% of all sales for all businesses in that market. So it's a huge demand. A lot of people traveling to it. Super cool market. What I thought was interesting too is our data is telling us that the average adult traveler spends well over $1,000 per trip, which I know doesn't seem like a lot, but as far as averages across the country, it's one of the biggest budgets per market. And so that's kind of interesting to see that people are spending a great deal of money. You've got a lot of short-term rentals in the greater Charleston area, a little over 3,300 short-term rentals, which is more than pretty much any market we've analyzed. But our average daily rate is really strong. We see an average daily rate of a little over $380 a night. So a lot of people are coming into this market. It's not cheap per night, but we do have pretty strong total occupancy at about 64%. Remember, your top performers are gonna be probably occupied 80, 90%, and your lower performers are going to be way lower than that, but the average is hovering around 64%, which is pretty strong. Where are people coming from? I thought this was really interesting. It's mostly a driving market. Most visitors are coming from North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Virginia, and they're driving in for weekend or 3 or 4 day trips. You do see some travelers come in from New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, but really, the big drivers are going to be your Charlotte, Atlanta, Raleigh, and DC metropolitan areas where people are traveling in and they're driving. And that makes sense. That's where I traveled from North Florida. And I could see why just a 6 to 8 hour drive to go check out Charleston for a couple of days is a no-brainer. Let's talk regulation. It's pretty strict. The city of Charleston's got a super tight grip on short-term rentals. Most of the rules for primary residence zoning do not allow you to have STRs. There are certain zoning areas that will limit you to 72 days per year unless you're in a commercial zone. And even Folly Beach, just about 30 minutes outside of Charleston, is becoming more and more strict and tightening their regulations. And so keep that in mind when you're looking at this market. Depending on the market, the zoning of the property that you're buying, it's going to come down to your ability to be able to do anything with that house more than 72 days a year, which would be crappy to be capped at that. So definitely keep that in mind and know that it's a pretty strict market. But if you find a property that you can legally short-term rental, it's gonna be a gold mine because the city is artificially capping that supply and they're not allowing people to throw them up everywhere. So what are the highlights? Okay, guys, it's obviously got the historic charm. There's a lot of cool architecture. There's some old forts and a lot of cool churches and buildings and things like that. That goes without being said, but I think one of the biggest reasons is the food. It really does have some of the best food in the United States outside of New York City. The restaurants are unmatched. It's some of the best food I've ever had traveling. And then you've got the history, the beaches, and world-class dining. So those three things definitely lead to a market that people want to visit. And what I thought was interesting too is it's one of the wedding capitals of the United States. And so it's a huge destination for weddings and bachelorette parties. Makes sense. You ever walk around Charleston, you see groups of women all over the place, covered in pink shirts, covered in pink little sachets, and they're having a blast on bachelorette parties. But remember, if you've got weddings, that means you have lots of families and groups traveling into this market for the weekends. and you can capitalize on that if you have a great short-term rental. So let's get into what the data tells us when we talk about amenities. So we know Charleston is a great market to invest in if you can find the right property that gives you the ability to do that outside the regulations. Good for you. We know there's a lot of short-term rentals there. We know that there's 3,300. And what do those markets have? I would say this is a seriously under-amenitized market. And so as we go through this data, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. 25% of short-term rentals in that market have fire pits. That is the most used amenity in this market, and only 25% of people have it. So 75% of them don't. A fire pit is kind of probably a must-have amenity. Most people have it as far as like the rest of this list. The next one is a pool. I was actually surprised by this. About 11% of the properties in this market have pool. If you guys get a property with a pool, obviously you will perform significantly better and you will immediately differentiate yourself from the 90% of folks that don't have a pool. But that's a stronger number than I would have expected. The next one is a home gym. 6.4% of properties in Charleston have home gyms. That's a relatively low number. And then the next two I thought were really interesting are hot tubs and saunas. The hot tubs are 5.1% of listings. So that's the lowest number I've ever seen of a hot tub. Even when we look at Florida markets, they have more hot tubs than 5%. So having a hot tub in Charleston is going to definitely help you differentiate your house. If you combine that with a sauna, where less than 0.5%, less than 1% of all listings have saunas, only 5% have hot tubs. If you do that combination of the two, you will immediately be well above 99% of all the other listings. Those are easily filtered amenities that people look for when they're searching for a short-term rental, and you will stand out with a very small select group of properties. Immediately, that's a no-brainer if you're setting up a property in Charleston. Next one is waterfront. 4.8% of listings are waterfront. That's relatively low. If you can find a property waterfront or with views, it can definitely help differentiate the home. When we talk about the fun stuff, game rooms, pool tables, and mini golf courses. 4% of properties have a game room. 1.3% have a pool table, and 1.2% have mini golf courses. That means that most of these properties are set up for adult travelers. They're not thinking about the fun stuff that kids love to have. Remember, just because you have a lot of bachelorette parties doesn't mean that there's not families traveling into town for that wedding and they're bringing kids with them. They're looking for kid-friendly properties, and very few Charleston properties are kid-friendly. So that can be a huge way to differentiate you guys. The last two, movie theaters, less than 0.5%, 0.05 have movie theaters. What's the math on that thing? If that's 5 per 1,000, that means 15 properties in Charleston have movie theaters. And if you set up a movie theater, you'll be one of 15 or one of 16. It's a no-brainer, guys. You have space, do it. And the last one is pickleball courts. Same thing. We found like less than 20 properties have pickleball courts out of the 3,300. It's a very small percentage, less than 1%. If you've got the space for a pickleball court, that can immediately differentiate your property. It is the highest revenue driving amenity we've seen in most markets. And so there you go, guys. That's the penetration per amenity. Lets you know what people are doing, how people are setting up properties in Charleston. We've already identified that it's a great market to invest in, and there's a lot of traveler demand. You just got to find that unicorn that allows you to meet the regulation requirements and gives you the opportunity to heavily amenitize it, and you can absolutely crush it in this market. Let me know if you guys need anything. Let me know if you like or dislike the new format. I will keep bringing these to you guys every Monday, and next week we're bringing you another Southern gem, and you guys will appreciate the next city as well. Talk to you soon. Later.